Welcome to our presentation on the primary motor cortex.
The primary motor cortex is a collection of upper motor neurons located within the precentral gyri. The motor neurons specifically associated with this structure are called Bett cells. Bett cells are pyramidal neurons that extend directly into the brainstem. The primary motor cortex sends information down two different pathways, the corticobulbar and corticospinal tracts. The corticobulbar tract sends information from the precentral gyri to the cranial nerves, which then go down their own pathways to initiate function in the face or neck. The corticospinal tract sends information through the internal capsule, through transverse pontine fibers, to the pyramids of the medulla, down both the lateral and ventral corticospinal tracts, through the lateral portion of the ventral horn of gray matter, to the lower motor neurons, which then take action within the extremities and trunk. The main function of the primary motor cortex is to control complex involuntary movements of the body. The primary motor cortex gathers information from the basal ganglia and cerebellum through the ventrolateral thalamus, as well as through the somatic sensory regions of the parietal lobe. The primary motor cortex is significant because it only takes a very low-intensity stimulation to allow the information to cascade through its systems. It takes the corticobulbar tract to control movement within the face and neck, and takes the corticospinal tract to control extremity and trunk movements. There is an image called the cortical homunculus, which is often used to describe which regions of the primary motor cortex are used to control which portion of the body. As you can see pictured here, the regions are explained using sections of the precentral gyri. We can start medially and inferiorly and see that this portion of the gyri controls toes and legs. As we move superiorly, this section includes the knees, hips, trunk, and shoulders. Then we can move laterally, which shows that sections of the cortex controlled in this order: elbow, wrist, hands, fingers, thumb, neck, brow, eyes, face, lips, jaw, tongue, and swallowing. Connecting back to what was mentioned before, through this we can see that the section of the primary motor cortex that is included in the corticospinal tract is more medial than the section included in the corticobulbar tract. Another thing you may notice about this image is that the sections are not very proportional to real life. This is because the sections that include areas with more refined movement need a larger area of the cortex to process that movement. Therefore, the sections that are larger have more intricate motor functions, as seen with the face and hands.
Next, I would like to introduce you to an area of research that has shown that the primary motor cortex is also involved in motor learning. Research done by Hari et al. Has shown that the PMC is activated when observing the movements of others. In this study, human subjects were asked to perform under 3 settings. The first setting, the subject was relaxing with no task. The second setting involved manipulating a small object in one hand, and the last setting involved observing a researcher manipulating a small object in their hand. The results showed in the MEG scans that the subject's primary motor cortex was significantly activated, specifically in the left Rolandic region, which relates to hand and forearm movement on the right side, as we saw in corus homunculus and corticospinal tract information. The activation was shown both during settings 2 and 3, with setting 3 being weaker in intensity. The study concluded that the PMC was being activated during motor observation and could be related to mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are known to fire both during a movement's execution and during observation of an action. Whether or not mirror neurons have functions in learning during development and functional adaptations is yet to be discovered. Overall, it has been shown in multiple studies that the primary motor cortex is involved in motor learning, but further research will be necessary to pinpoint exactly how.
Now look at how the primary motor cortex applies to the physical therapy profession. Physical therapists play an important role in helping patients recover from primary motor cortex deficits or injuries. These deficits can often be a result of a stroke. According to the CDC, stroke is a leading cause of serious long-term disability and results in reduced mobility in more than half of stroke survivors 65 years of age or older. Constraint-induced movement therapy is a common treatment option for patients recovering from a stroke that resulted in movement deficits. This type of therapy involves restraining the less affected arm with a sling or mitten, which then causes the patient to use the affected arm more often. The patient will wear the sling or mitten for the majority of the day and to perform any activities of daily living. In training the affected arm, physical therapists can use a procedure called shaping. Shaping works with the affected arm to perform a small portion of a movement with a level of difficulty increasing over time. The shaping exercise depends on the needs of the patient and targets the movement with the greatest potential to improve. Movements can include abducting the arm to rest on a table, using a pincher grasp to pick up a paperclip, or attempting to stack checkers. Research has shown that physical therapy can improve mobility by focusing on repetitive practices. Using repetitive exercises stimulates the brain and reinforces the demand for the targeted function and works to rewire the neural pathways for the specific function. This research can help physical therapists provide better care for their patients and increase the patient's quality of life.